te saba jagad mishrita, Aishvarya stitila premi nahi mora prita. Knowing my opulences, the whole world looks on me with awe and reverence. But devotion made feeble by such reverence does not attract me. Om Jnana Timirnasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshurdun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda Mukam Kroti Machalam Pangum Langayate Gurum Yat Kripatam Aham Vande Shri Gurum Dinataranam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram Hari Om Tat Sat. Welcome everyone, especially the Be a Monks challenge. Thank you for accepting the challenge. Today we're reading from this book called the Caitanya-caritāmṛta, which is written by the author. I guess like whenever you're reading a book, you should always like understand who is the author, right? That's like the first thing about any book. So his name is Krishna Das Kavi Raj. So Krishna Das, does anyone know what Krishna Das means? Yeah, Krishna means Krishna, one who is attractive to everyone. And Das means servant. Does anyone know what Kavi Raj means? Yeah, Kavi means poetry and Raj means king. So Kavi Raj means the king of poets. And that was a title given to him by his peers due to composing such works like the Caitanya-caritāmṛta and others. And so like any good poet, like if you listen to any like good rap song, there's always people that are breaking down the bars and saying, oh, he actually meant like 2 or 3 different things in this. Or even sometimes I've seen there's like quadruple entendres, you know, when one phrase can mean multiple things and they're all those things were intended by the author. So the title of this poetry, so he's a poet, so whatever he writes is poetry. You notice we were singing it, the whole, you know, you can see stacked up there, it's like 18 different volumes completely full of this poetry. And so the title of this work is called Caitanya-caritāmṛta. And that's also a double entendre. The first meaning, the meaning at face, so Chaitanya means living force. So we are all Chaitanya. We all have this living force inside us. Like this desk that I have my laptop on doesn't have living force. So it can't move, it can't walk around, it can't have activities. But we all move around and have activities. So Chaitanya, so it refers, you know, kind of to all of us. Then Charita means character. It's actually kind of a cognate, very close. Charita and character almost sound the same. And then Amrita can refer to immortal nectar or immortality. So therefore, this is the character of the living force in immortality. So this poetry is not just speaking about the regular activity of those in the material world, but it's speaking about and explaining the character of how does, like, you know, how would the living force actually act in an immortal, eternal circumstance. And we look at the activities of this world. Most of us are engaged simply in, you know, animalistic, habitual, instinctive activities like eating, sleeping, sex, and defending, or sometimes it's called in like being afraid, being fearful. And that's the reason why we defend, because we're scared of the other side. Like in, you know, when we were growing up, like the Middle East, where they were known as terrorists, because at least according to what the media was saying, they're trying to make everyone else scared of them based on what they could do, even though they were some small sect. And so on the basis of that, many big wars were fought. And that's the idea behind almost all kinds of fighting or defending is fear. So this poem is not illustrating those kind of activities, which we're abundantly used to, but it's explaining how we can adjust our consciousness from that of this kind of lower animalistic consciousness to what the consciousness would be of immortal beings, which is actually we're all immortal beings, but we're just in this kind of condition, in this illusion, which in this poetry it's called Maya. So that's one meaning, the nature of the living force in immortality. Then the double entendre in this title is also Caitanya is also the name of the main hero of this poetry. So it also is basically glorifying the activities or character of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And then when we hear about that, we learn about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, it's like drinking nectar which heals all our wounds and makes one immortal. So that's the other meaning of Caitanya-caritāmṛta. It's like the biography explaining and showcasing the activities, the nectarian activities of Lord Chaitanya. And so who is Chaitanya? Well, in the Vedas, it's stated Nityo Nityanam Chaitanas Chaitananam. So Nityo means eternal beings. So among all the eternal beings, there is one eternal being, like above the rest. And Chaitanas Chaitananam, of all conscious living beings, there's one supreme consciousness, one supreme conscious living being. And it is that one being who is providing the needs of the many other living beings. So there's unlimited other living entities, but there's one supreme living entity, and which, I mean, in English we call it God. In Sanskrit, there's many more different specific names. And then there are the infinitesimal sparks, and there's the singular infinite source. So our living force is like one of the infinitesimal sparks, and God's living force is like that, like the main fire or the singular infinite source. And the difference between like the sparks and the source is that, if a spark goes out of the fire, then it can fizzle out, it can disintegrate. Whereas the fire is the one generating all the sparks. In other words, the spark or the infinitesimal living force can be put into illusion. And so this poetry is teaching us how to actually get out of that illusion. Has anyone heard of the Bhagavad Gita? Yeah. So actually this Caitanya-caritāmṛta, it's not like in the first sentence, if you like read it in the introduction, this is not intended for the novice. So I know you guys are here like just learning about some of this stuff. Prabhupada compares it to the postgraduate study of spiritual knowledge. And then he says, ideally, you learn the principles in the Gita, and then you learn the principles in, like, that's like getting your undergrad. Then you get your master's degree, which is like the Bhagavatam. Have anyone heard about the Srimad Bhagavatam? That's another poetry that's about the same spiritual topic. But the principles in there aren't so showcased, where this Caitanya-caritāmṛta is like the PhD, where things are fully explained and fully showcased. And so the Bhagavad Gita was also spoken by our original source, Krishna. And the essential meaning of the Bhagavad Gita is, okay, you want to break out of illusion, you want to get out of these problems, then surrender unto me, surrender unto the original source, reconnect back with our original source. But the problem is, just hearing this and agreeing with this is one thing, but being able to actually do it and what to actually do. Okay, I want to surrender unto Krishna, but actually, how do you do that besides just thinking of it? So it was difficult to follow. So like a good teacher, if some student is struggling, like writing their letters or something like that, like when you're really young, you're learning to write all your different letters, so they can't write the letter. So the teacher goes up and shows how to write the letters on the student's paper. Then the student can understand, oh, that's how you do it. And so the main lesson that that's being shown in the Caitanya-caritāmṛta, how to get out of the illusory entanglement, is to simply act in our natural relationship with our ultimate source. So like I was saying, if a small spark is out of the fire, it disintegrates. But if you put it back into the fire, then it's therefore it'll never go out. Or if take a fish out of water, then it's just flopping around, it can't do anything. But if you put it back into water, then it's in its natural condition. It can actually exist properly. Or if you're trying to, like whoever's in botany here, like you're trying to water a plant, like you don't really like water all the leaves and the branches. Like that will just, mostly what will happen depending on the plant, that'll just dry it out and probably kill it faster. Whereas if a plant needs water and needs nourishment, you water the bottom, you water the dirt, you water the root of the plant. So the main lesson that is taught in the Caitanya-caritāmṛta, how to get us out of illusion, is to make it our ambition to be able to serve our original source, to serve Krishna. This is what bhakti yoga means. So the Gita brings us through these lower yogas, karma yoga, jnana yoga, dhyana yoga, and it concludes with bhakti yoga being the highest. And Srimad Bhagavatam showcases in different ages and different circumstances how that bhakti yoga was exhibited by various living entities. And this Caitanya-caritāmṛta kind of tops all that by showing like how we can actually, in our current position, in our consciousness, how we can actually engage in that bhakti yoga or service. And so service is not like a matter of meditation, which is only in the mind. Like, okay, I want to serve Krishna, or I want to surrender. Like, that's good to think something like that. I have so many problems. I'm in such illusion. I really just, I want to get out of this. I want to surrender. Okay, nice. But there should be some practical, actually, activity, because we can only go on in our mind so long. There's so many things we have to do during the day. I mean, you have to, like I'm saying, you have to sleep, you have to eat, you have to mate, you have to defend, do all these things. So one thing the Caitanya-caritāmṛta teaches us, and hopefully you're learning in this Be a Monk weekend, is that whatever we have, whatever we can do, that can all be engaged if it's done in the proper way. It can be engaged in service to Krishna. So whatever we have, we can engage in the service of Krishna. We can engage everything in the service. And then when we do that, we get out of this illusory circumstance. We get out of our conditioning. We get out of what's in this poetry, it's called Maya. So this service is that is the actual nature of immortality. The same, like we're on this earthly planet where everything is mortal, everything is on this lower level, but then there's eternal planets. And on those eternal planets, we can engage in that same eternal nature that all the entities there are engaging in. We can engage in that same nature here, and then we're on a non-different platform. But of course, there's different stages. So I wish we had our TV, gee whiz, but there's different stages to that development. Like one can simply just accept that there's God and acknowledge that He's great. Like God is great. Okay, very nice. But you can go further, and many different scriptures talk about like love of God and talk about how we should surrender to God, and that's very great. So where the Caitanya-caritāmṛta, the PhD, it goes and it explicitly defines who and what is God, who is the person of God, and then explicitly how we can develop our love for Him. And it's a science. And so right now we're in the third chapter of the first section of this book. And so it's basically giving an overview. And in the verses that I read, I mean, it'd be nicer if we had them up, because I don't think all you guys have photographic memory, neither do I. But the first verse is talking about, and I'll read it, and I'll read our Guru's commentary on it, Srila Prabhupada. He's the one who translated these poetry into English so we could all understand it and then apply it. So what Krishnadas Kaviraj is talking about, he's talking about the different stages of devotional service and God realization. And once you reach perfection, or pure love or pure service. It's called prema, or sthai bhava. I mean, these are different scientific Sanskrit terms. There's different relationships that you can have with the Lord. And so the main relationships are listed here. You can be a servant, you can be a friend, you can, what we just did right before this class, and I know there's like a lot of like singing and chanting, which that's the reason that is because singing, it helps control your mind and direct it towards one thing. You know, you kind of like, if you're getting something into a melody, into a beat, you kind of have to like focus your mind. And so it makes meditation very easy. So we have a lot of things where we sing a lot and we chant a lot because it's the easiest way to kind of control the mind in this day and age. Where previously in other ages, different practices are recommended to develop this bhakti or to develop our consciousness. But in this day and age, you know, chanting and singing are specifically mentioned as the best ways. And so what we were just singing before, if you heard the translation, if you remember it, does anyone remember any of the translations from the Be a Monk crew? The thing we just did? Lewis, hit me with just something. It doesn't, paraphrase it, it doesn't matter.
Basically, the author's devotion always be of the Lord in the form of Damodar, which is like Krishna.
Yeah, you see him right there, the picture right there. So in the Bible, Jesus is famously known for calling out to God as Abba, or like, "Oh Father." You know, in a very amazing situation, he's getting crucified, and he says, "Oh, you know, forgive them; they don't know what they're doing." You know, amazing compassion, calling out to God as the Father, and teaching us, you know, God is the source. What do you need to, if the elephants are eating and all the birds are eating? What do you need to worry about your food? So that's, he's teaching a level of God consciousness. Um, where he doesn't get to the level of there's different levels, different stages. So the level that this poem that we sang before this class is talking about, how instead of us seeing God as the Father, which is valid and true, Krishna is the origin of everything, he's the ultimate Father, but in love, in a loving relationship, this can be turned upside down, whereas the devotee can actually, through their love, have a relationship with Krishna as a, like in a fatherly or motherly figure to the Lord. You know, as like, okay, the Lord's maintaining everyone, right? You know, all the universe is created by the Lord, and we don't, you know, we're just put in this situation, and our whole life is practically arranged, so it's, we can actually experience what we need to experience. So Lord is maintaining everyone. But when you get to that level of love, um, you actually think that you're maintaining the Lord. So it's kind of this like wonderful, loving relationship. And so the whole pastime happened where you see this picture on the right side of the altar, where this young blue boy is being tied to this big thing behind him by his mother. So that's actually Mother Yashoda tying Krishna around this big grinding mortar, because she wants to punish him. Because the one duty of parents is in maintaining their child, um, making a good, you know, a good child. Part of it is punishing them, making them realize that yes, there are boundaries that you should not cross. There are things you should not do, and so instilling that in a child will make them grow up to be very nice rather than naughty. And so Krishna had done something naughty, and so Mother Yashoda was going to bind him and put him in timeout, you know, because she was actually getting very busy to make a whole big festival, and she couldn't have him getting any more mischief. She wanted him to realize what he did was wrong. And so when trying to tie him, rather than, you know, if we're a baby and we did something wrong and our parents want to put us in the playpen or put us in our cradle, there's nothing we can really do about it. But if you're playing the part of a child and you're actually the Supreme Personality of Godhead, you know, who can actually contain the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Mother Yashoda is trying to tie this rope around Damodar. Damodar means rope around his belly, and so tied by the belly, Damodar. And so but it's coming up short every single time. And Mother Yashoda keeps grabbing more rope, making a knot in the rope and making it longer, and then trying to tie it. But it's coming up just a little short every time, and she's getting bewildered. And she's saying, "No, I have to punish my son. He needs to understand what's doing right. No matter what, I'm going to punish him. No matter what happens. I don't know what mystical craziness is going on, but I'm going to punish him." So she lives in a cowherd village, so they have tons and tons of rope, and she proceeds to get every single rope from the entire village and is trying to tie it, and it's just not working. Until at the very end, she has like the most concerted effort, and she's done every last thing, not a single stone left unturned. And at that moment, Krishna, the supreme source of everything, the supreme maintainer, the one who is infallible and uncontrollable and uncontainable, agrees to be bound not by the ropes that Mother Yashoda is tying around him, but by her loving sentiment, by her love, her pure love that is just wanting to experience this relationship with him. And in that, he agrees to be bound. So that's one of the levels talked about. That's called Vatsalya Bhav. So there's four main loving relationships: Dasya, being a servitor; friendship, like on the Bhagavad Gita. Have you read the Bhagavad Gita and heard it a little bit? You know, the basic, it's about Arjuna being told by Krishna certain things. Like you heard that much at least, right? Right? So Arjuna, he gets shown the universal form of Krishna because Krishna says, "Because I'm your friend, I'll show this to you." And so he sees this like ghastly form, and then he suddenly starts apologizing. He's like, "Krishna, please forgive me for all the things I did to you out of like friendly jest." Like they were actually very great friends. And so that's one level of love, of friendship, but it's tainted by awe and veneration. So one of the verses we heard is that, everyone knows my opulence, and the whole world looks at me with awe and veneration. But then Krishna says, "But such devotion made feeble by reverence does not attract me." So Krishna doesn't really like it when someone's like groveling, "Oh, you're the greatest and you're the biggest." I mean, for us, in our position in the conditioned nature, it's good for us to bow down to the Lord, to make prayers to the Lord, to understand His glories and opulence. But then when we're talking about getting a PhD in love of Godhead, the very subtle characteristic is that this regulative devotional service on the basis of awe and veneration is not the actual highest thing. It's not the highest thing that pleases the Lord. The Lord wants to have a relationship in friendship, like with Arjuna, but without any conception of awe and veneration, completely free in that completely mature, beautiful, loving relationship. And so, and this, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he's come in this Caitanya-caritāmṛta, and he's showing actually practically how to develop this. So we can actually become friends with Krishna without any awe or any adoration, or like we can become a motherly or fatherly figure compared to Krishna. And even some people are like, in their philosophy, they think they can become one with God and they can become God. But we always say that that's kind of like a foolish sentiment. But actually, if you follow the proper conclusions of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, then not only can you become equal to God, you can become in a position greater than God through love. That's the secret, not through meditation or through any weird kind of like dissolving yourself and integrating yourself into like the collective whole, and then somehow by disintegrating yourself, you're more than God. That's all very confusing, and it gets too philosophical, and it's not really the right thing. But it's simple to understand that the greatest leader or king may be very like strict in his court, and like everyone's like respecting him, but then he goes home to his son who's 3 years old and play wrestles with him and gets defeated by him, and it's like a very loving sentiment. So similarly, God has these different characteristics to him, and so we've all heard the phrase "love of God," but in this Caitanya-caritāmṛta, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is showing us how far that love of Godhead can go. How much how much more information is here than can be really found elsewhere. And so he's giving this practical demonstration. So we'll read some comments by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. He's explaining how dasya, or friendship, servitude, like we said, Krishna das means servitude, sakya, friendship, like Arjuna, but even more, vatsalya, like Mother Yashoda, and Shringara, like Radharani, are the transcendental modes of loving service to the Lord. Shantaras, there's a fifth stage called Shantaras, which I was saying before, like if someone just knows that God is great and says, yes, God is so great, that we're already in a relationship with the Lord at that point, at least in respecting Him. So that's like a neutral stage of love. And it's not mentioned in this verse because although in Shantaras one considers the absolute truth the sublime great, one does not go beyond this conception. So Shantaras is a very great idea for materialistic philosophers, but in this PhD of spiritual life, this idealistic appreciation is only the very beginning. It's the lowest amongst all the different relationship and stages in the spiritual world. So Shantaras is not given much importance, because as soon as there's a slight understanding between the knower and the known, then this active, loving, transcendental reciprocations, ideally they begin. If you just get to the stage where like, oh, Vasily, I love you so much, then that's all I do. I just always just say how I just always glorify you and I don't do anything else. I go, okay, you love me so much, what are you going to do about it? Like, it's like actions speak louder than words, isn't it? Everyone heard that statement. So you can always just say, yeah, oh, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. But then you go and like, in this world, the common trope, okay, oh, I love you, and then you go cheat on them. Like, okay, what kind of love was that? And so, similar with Shantaras, it's like just saying it, it's like a lower stage. And so Dasyaras is the kind of the basic relationship. Okay, I love you and I'm a servitor of you. Therefore, I want to do service. So Krishna Das, even in his name, he's showcasing that, the author of this. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is showing how we can actually serve Krishna. And so Dasyaras is the first transcendental stage. And like I'm saying before, like one of the main ways this chapter 3 of the Ādi-līlā that it goes through is showing how we can actually serve the Lord in this day and age. One of the easiest ways is by actively meditating and broadcasting His glories through, singing about Him, like we've done like all morning. In the morning we sang a few different prayers, Guru Vastakam. So we're singing to Guru. Guru is has a close connection with God. So they can also bring us into that connection, bring us closer. You can't get invited to a party unless you know someone there. And once you know someone there, it's not like, it's not about what you know, it's about who you know, right? And so then we sing Narsingha prayers. So we're glorifying Krishna's aspect as the divine protector, which is kind of blocked by Lord Jagannath's altar, but there's a photo of Lord Nrsingadev back there. And so we're remembering how the Lord protects His devotees. Then we sing to Tulsi, which for newcomers, it may seem strange, walking in circles around a plant. But we're actually, Tulsi is the incarnation of a devotee, so we're also praying to another devotee. So it's like another person that can help let us into the party, give us some more mercy and credit. And then, again, before this class, we sang another prayer, this Guru Vandana, prayers to the Guru, describing the glories of how the Guru, if we just make the words coming out of our mouth and the thoughts in our mind one with the words coming out of the mouth of Sri Guru, then that can fulfill all our desires. So if we start to think like the Guru, we start to act like the Guru, and our consciousness becomes like the Guru, then because the Guru is one who's actually in a relationship with Krishna, actually has this, we can also advance towards that. And then, of course, we chanted about this month, we're chanting the special prayers to Lord Damodar and offering a flame, offering the flame of our love, represented by the ghee wick, by the little candle. and to, the sage who wrote this prayer had very deep realization, and so glorifying that can also help us develop it. And so many singing and prayers, and also chanting Hare Krishna. That's the main one. And what does chanting Hare Krishna mean? Did they teach you that yet? I mean, you've chanted Hare Krishna quite a few times, probably. In the morning, we probably did the meditation on the beads and things like that. But was it explained? Hadai, did you guys have a japa class explaining what is the meaning of the Maha Mantra? Okay, well, here, it's very simple. It just means, Lord, please engage me in your service. So it's just starting on that level of that basic realization. Okay, God is great. I'm His servant. I should serve Him. Therefore, let me be engaged in service. And the transcendental potency of the name is, even though we're here in this material illusion, stuck on the this weird conditioned platform, that we can, with our eternal consciousness, which is always connected with the Lord, we can actually communicate with the Lord and speak to the Lord. And so humbly asking for service is the best way. The Lord then can arrange our life so that we have an opportunity to do service to Him, even though we're in this condition where we're like, we don't see the Lord, we're not connected with the Lord to actually be able to practically see Him. Just by calling out to Him, He can make that arrangement. And one of the arrangements that He makes is to hear about Him, because the more that information we get about the Lord, once there's a relationship of knower and known, then the transcendental loving service can actually begin. So even just hearing about Him in different scriptures will give us the impetus to do more service, and the idea of how we can actually do service. So I'll read the purport now of Prabhupada of the next verse, because there's actually 5 verses that we went through, although we couldn't see it on the screen. Sorry. Normally we do it. It's a lot easier to follow. The descent of Sri Krishna, the absolute personality of Godhead, is very purposeful. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that one who knows the truth about Krishna's descent and his various activities is at once liberated, does not have to fall again into the existence of birth and death after he leaves this material body. So in other words, one who factually understands Krishna makes his life perfect. So if you actually understand Krishna, then what do? You start serving Krishna. And what is service to Krishna? That's the nature of the living force in immortality. Then instead of getting transferred to, if the nature of your living force is that of mortality, then you just get transferred to another mortal womb, and you have another mortal birth, and you have another mortal life. And then of course, mortal. What does mortal mean? And you have another mortal death. And that just continues until your consciousness reaches the stage where it's actually the nature of the consciousness in immortality. Then what happens? You get to transfer to a situation where you no longer have to take birth and death, because you're immortal, because you don't die, therefore you don't have to be born. But that takes a lot of change in our immortal situation. There's a lot of things we do that would really disturb an immortal situation. Even how long can you live with one roommate before they start getting annoying or something like that? Or how long can there's a common trope, a husband and wife get married, and the first few years of a relationship is always the lovey-dovey, what is it called, honeymoon phase. But then it gets to more either they divorce or they become more dutiful, especially in religious settings. They don't want to have a divorce because it's considered irreligious. So based on the duty towards their religion, towards their actual nature, they do it. And you look at very old married couples who have been doing that, and it's it's not they don't want to do that forever necessarily. It's getting very difficult. So, but we have to change our consciousness, because if we're immortal, everyone that we're around, we're going to be around forever. So you have to be able to act in such a way that you maintain loving relationships. So that's what we learn in Caitanya-caritāmṛta. And then on the other hand, imperfect life, which we've all realized in material existence, also has the same 5 different relationships. You can be neutral to someone, oh yeah, Muhammad Ali, the greatest. Or now they say the GOAT, that person's the GOAT. And then even now they use it as almost it just means you're good. You're good at something. Oh, he's the GOAT. And it doesn't actually mean the greatest of all time. But our servitorship. Who here has ever worked a job? and got paid money, right? So you had a boss. So you had to serve him somehow. He told you what to do, and he gave you money, and that was your relationship of servitorship. And who here has ever had friends? Oh, sorry, Hidai. Yeah, I mean, we've all had friends, and everyone here, I guarantee you all had parents, because it doesn't, I mean, unless you were cloned in a lab, but then you could say the scientists were your parents, but I doubt any of you were done like that. And most of everyone has also had either a girlfriend or a boyfriend, or it's 2024 and they are their friend, whatever it is. And so, that's the 5 main kind of relationships. And these are enjoyable relationships in some sense, but because of the perverted reflection and the perverted nature in this material world, they're all these activities are full of inebrities. But when they become transcendental in a relationship with the absolute personality of Godhead, then it's fully amazing. And there's a few more things to read, but it's kind of a high topic. I think, just to summarize, we're reading the Caitanya-caritāmṛta, which is by Krishnadas Kaviraj, the king of poets. And this poetry is describing, what does Caitanya-caritāmṛta mean? Anyone remember? What does Chaitanya mean? Living force. Say it. Yeah. What does Charita mean? Yeah, character, right? Because it sounds like character. That's an easy way to remember it. And Amrita, immortal nectar. So what does Caitanya-caritāmṛta mean? Yeah, life force. The characteristic of the life force in immortality, right? It makes sense. And it's this PhD of spiritual knowledge, and it's talking about how Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, came to show us, like a teacher showing how to write letters, how to actually attain that consciousness, attain that character in our living force, because we're all living forces and we're all in this illusion and we want to get out of it. Or we're in it right now and we're suffering. Whether we want to get out of it, that's another thing. But the more we hear about that there's another nature, the more we'll want to act in a way to change our consciousness to get out of it. And there's different relationships we can have with our Supreme Absolute Source. And when we actually act in those relationships, then it'll develop more and more. And the science is given in this book, in this poetry. And there's another point which is made in these verses by Krishna. He's saying, knowing my opulences, the whole world looks at me with awe and veneration. But devotion made feeble by such reverence does not attract me. So like we were saying, like Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, he's a friend of Krishna, but then when he starts like groveling and like begging forgiveness for treating Krishna like a friend, Krishna doesn't like that. He's not attracted by that. He'd rather be like in let's see, do we have all these nice pictures? Do we have a picture of what I'm thinking about? Not here. Krishna would rather, get into a wrestling match with his friends and be defeated, or do something on a very close, intimate, personal level in complete freedom like that. He doesn't want to be around people that are just always going to be saying, "Oh, you're so great, you're so great, you're so great." This is a characteristic even you see of normally great people, that they actually want just regular friends. They don't want to just like always be told, "Oh, you're so great." Usually, they're actually great people have this characteristic of humility. So God is the source of all great people. He's actually the greatest. He's actually the GOAT, the greatest of all time. And so part of that is he doesn't want to. God is also unlimited, and he has different ways people can reciprocate with him. Like there is unlimited eternal world where you can always associate with him like that. It's called Vaikuntha. But there's another world where you associate him in pure love called Vraja. So this Vraj, this love that's found in the realm of Vraj, is what's very attractive and tasteful to him. And so that's what Lord Chaitanya, Krishna himself, came in the mood of, we see on the altar Radha and Krishna, he came in the mood of Radharani, who is his ultimate lover. That, like we say, Krishna is the whole and Radharani is the counter whole instead of counterpart, because they're both the same supreme whole. And so he came in the mood of Radharani to show us actually how to develop our love of God ultimately in one of these loving relationships. And so I guess, does anyone have any more things to reflect on, or like questions that may have arisen in the mind, or complaints? Well, the, the the general etiquette is if the anyways, you were enthusiastic. All right, that's also. Well, no one else had any questions. Anyone else? Krishna Kripa, you have anything? All right, Nick, you're just.
Thanks. So what should you be careful for when you're trying to have a personal relationship with God, that you're not, taking it to an extreme where you are not thinking of God as God?
Well, like this is the PhD we're talking about, and we have to start with getting our high school diploma, our GED, then our undergrad, then our master's. So part of getting your high school diploma is realizing, okay, there is God, and He has qualities such like He's a source of everything. He's the maintainer of everyone. He's has different opulences like complete strength and complete knowledge, and he doesn't compete with anyone. There's no competition. And when we start to learn these qualities and serve him, okay, therefore I should go to the temple and bow down. These are called the regulative principles, and they're to help temper our consciousness to get us out of illusion, but it's and to get us to a platform of like relative purity. But if we try to jump ahead to the PhD without getting our undergrad, like who thinks they could just jump into a PhD without taking any courses before that? You can't do that. But if you tried to do that, what would happen? It's like you would just be confused by the terms, you would upset everyone, and it just wouldn't make any sense. So similarly, one who jumps to try to just almost pretend like they love God, and therefore I love God, I'm in this relationship as like his parent, so I'm not going to come down and bow in the temple, because a parent doesn't bow in the temple. If they do something like that, it's called prakrita, or material sahaja, material naturalism. Sahaja means like natural. Like when you actually love God, everything you do naturally is in that loving sentiment, that loving relationship. But when you advance too quickly and it's not actually spiritual love, it's just a figment of your imagination, it's called prakrita, or material sahaja. It's and so it's just very cheap, and like sometimes you'll have people that try to practice this religion and they try to impress people. They may like chant, and then they start crying and rolling on the ground, but it's not because they're actually in some sort of ecstatic swoon remembering the glorious qualities of the Lord. Is that they want other people to see them as great. So it's like out of their own humility. So what we can do is, Srila Prabhupada and the different gurus and the acharyas, they've given us basic understandings that help us follow and get to that level of purity. And then from that platform, then we can develop further. And naturally, just by chanting Hare Krishna, please engage me in your service, that is like a seed that just grows and grows and grows until that ultimate fruit of love of Godhead in these different relations. So we can chant Hare Krishna nicely. That's the easiest way to actually keep ourselves safe.
Hare Krishna, thank you for the wonderful class on such deep topics in a very relatable and understandable way. I just wanted to add a comment that while we're discussing these different relationships that we can have with God, it's important to remember that the basis of all those relationships is dasya, servitude. So it's not that like servitude is one relationship to be a servant of God, and then when you go to another relationship, like being His friend, that service stops. Actually, we're all. It said in the scriptures that our constitutional position is to be a servant of God. Jivara Swarupai Krishnera Nitya Das, like eternal servant. So in whatever relationship we try to cultivate with God, it starts at service and that is maintained. Where with like Krishna's parent, Mother Yashoda, that we see on the altar, she's serving him as a child. You know, she's cooking for him, bathing him, just taking care of him as as a parent, and he's her child. And in the same way with his friends, they're giving joy to him by being his friend and playing, and so there is service in it, but that's not the focus of the relationship. But it's always, so that's how we can avoid this familiarity that Nick was asking about. Like, how do we always remember that he's actually God, and try to develop a personal relationship by always remembering that we're his servant and trying to serve.
And so now the next portion of service is eating service. So we can engage everything, like I said, eating, sleeping, mating, defending, all these things can be engaged in the service of the Lord. So the way to engage eating is that we eat, basically we eat Krishna prasad, or food that's connected with Krishna. And that way it's been made by people who are also connected with Krishna, and so their consciousness is infused with it. It's served by devotees who are connected with Krishna, so their consciousness is infused with it. And when we eat that, it gives us strength in our body so we can do more service, and also the consciousness of those who prepared it help bolster our own consciousness so we can do better service. Thank you very much. Shri Caitanya-caritāmṛta ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaura Bhaktivinoda ki jai.
Natabara-Gauranga ki jai.